AM agenda.
Good morning and welcome to the program. The Defence Department has confirmed that 3 Australian soldiers have been wounded in another attack in Afghanistan. The department says although the wounds are serious, all 3 soldiers are in a stable conditions. The families have been notified as well. Defence is currently consolidating information from the area of operations and will provide further details when the facts are available and confirmed. There are reports, however, from Afghanistan that this is another case of an Afghan army soldier turning his gun on the Australian soldiers. We should mention as well 2 Afghan army soldiers were also wounded in this attack. With me on the program to discuss this and the other issues of the day this morning, from Melbourne Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg and in Sydney Labor MP Ed Husic. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kieran. Good morning, Ed.
Good day, Josh.
Josh, first to you. You were in Afghanistan earlier in the year, saw the troops on the ground, got a sense of the mood there. You know what the operation is. This has got to undermine the whole trust and confidence that underpins the work they do there.
Well, Kieran, this incident is another painful reminder of how difficult this mission really is, but we need to bear some key facts in mind. Firstly, it's very much an international mission. Australia is one of more than 40 countries that are participating under the NATO and ISAF banner. Secondly, we are making a real difference on the ground. Our 1,500 troops are helping to build schools, help to build a mosque, and most importantly have helped to train the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police, which are closely numbering up to 300,000 troops and police on the ground, which will make a real difference to peace and stability. And thirdly, there is an exit strategy. This exit strategy is at the end of 2014. It's a bipartisan commitment from Australia, and we will see it through despite the heavy burdens and costs that we are incurring.
Ed Husic, is there any mood within Labor, any sense among your colleagues that it is time to pull the troops out, that 2014 is too long?
I don't get that sense whatsoever. I think there's a recognition that this is not an easy job, that we need to basically be committed over a period of time to ensure that we can see stability in Afghanistan. Picking up on the points Josh made, in particular the issue of training up in terms of the Army and the National Police. These are absolutely vital elements of ensuring stability within Afghanistan, and I think that's going to take a period of time to ensure that occurs. But as has already been indicated, there is a point at which we've said we're prepared to start drawing down on troops, but to do it in a way that there is stability within Afghanistan. And bear in mind, this is as a result of a need to go in and tackle Al-Qaeda, who were basically forming themselves or strengthening themselves within Afghanistan, and this needed to be done.
Absolutely right. I mean, this is the front line.
Okay, sorry, Josh. I'll let you wrap up
this
there.
is the front. I was just saying, agreeing with Ed here, this is the front line on the war of terror. I mean, 9/11, those culprits responsible for 9/11 were directly linked to Afghanistan. We know that terrorist groups operating in our region have had training in the Pakistan-Afghani border. We know how unstable that is. If there was to be a precipitous withdrawal of international troops, including Australian troops, this would open up a power vacuum which Al-Qaeda and their adherents could fill and create much more terrorist havoc in the world.
Okay, we're expecting a news conference 10:15 from the Defence Department headquarters. We'll bring that to you live, and the latest information that we receive from Defence. But as I say, Defence headquarters holding that news conference at 10:15 Eastern Summer Time. Let's turn our attention now to domestic politics, the carbon tax. It passed the Senate yesterday. The Prime Minister said it was a win for Australia's children. Today, the government, today, the nation, she says, has made history. That was her comment in responding to the passage of the tax through the Senate. Let's hear what she had to say.
Today's vote is a win for Australia's children. It's a win for those who will seek their fortune and make their way by having jobs in our clean energy sector. It's a win for those who want our environment to be a cleaner environment and to see less carbon pollution. Today we have made history.
the Prime Minister there with a legislative win yesterday, Ed Husic, but the broader win, the political win, far from certain here, isn't it? There's a lot that remains in question once this is delivered, and certainly once the compensation is delivered, whether you can turn this around.
I don't think, well, from my perspective, what isn't in question here is the fact that as a result of what we're doing, we will cut 160 million tonnes of pollution out of the air by 2020. We will ensure that we can maintain our international commitment, the bipartisan commitment to cut emissions by 5% by 2020, and that in doing so we can ensure that we make a dramatic and demonstrable impact in terms of the quality of life for the people that follow us. It won't see the type of scare campaign that has been unleashed over the course of the last few months that have basically predicted that everything would go to waste as a result of what's going on. You only need to look yesterday. Energy stocks up on the ASX, mining stocks up, resources up.
Come on, Ed. That's you're being economically illiterate when you're pointing up to those
and we're still to see evidence of what's been predicted to occur. But we've got the next few months of implementation and to start getting things moving. So there's still a lot of work to do.
Kieran,
let's hear Josh. Josh, let me ask you. We'll ask you about that. Obviously, there's confidence in the resources stocks and elsewhere. They all were up on the ASX yesterday. But you can respond to that point that Ed made. But also, I want to put to you the suggestion by the government that Tony Abbott was spineless. That was the comment from Wayne Swan, that he wasn't there for the vote. It wasn't in Australia for that vote yesterday. Given that he said he's going to fight this to the death, it's an oath sworn in blood, a lot of strong rhetoric, but he wasn't there when the vote went through the Senate.
That's a ridiculous argument, Kieran. It went through the House, and Tony and myself and Ed were all present for that. Now it has gone through the Senate. That's not where Tony Abbott sits, and he had important business overseas. But two, I want to take issue with what Ed has said. On the government's own modelling by Treasury, emissions in Australia will go up by 2020, 43 million tonnes. This is forcing the government to use $3.5 billion of Australian taxpayers' money to buy international carbon permits in 2020. Now, we know that system is being rorted. There is a $5 billion rort going on in Norway, and there are other examples elsewhere in Europe. So this is a flawed system. As for the Prime Minister's comment that this is going to create new jobs, international experience where they have moved to new renewable energy jobs and focus in the UK and in Spain, it's actually cost jobs. So for every job you create, which is so-called a green job, you're actually losing 2 or 3 or more jobs in the real economy. And this is why this is a job-destroying tax. This is going to lift the price of electricity for all households. It's actually going to send investment offshore. And just this week we had Coogee, which is a major methanol producer in Australia, deciding not to proceed with a $1 billion infrastructure project in Victoria. This would have created 150 jobs, $14 billion of revenue, and they pointed the finger. They pointed the finger at the carbon tax.
All right, Josh. Ed Husic, it's not just the coalition making that point. The Business Council of Australia, the Australian Industry Group and others have expressed concerns that we're far too ahead of the rest of the world in pricing carbon as extensively, economy-wide carbon tax, the program that you put in place.
I mean, there's just been selective quoting of figures. I mean, at the same time as Treasury's been quoted on the one hand as making suggestions about emission cuts, you ignore the fact that 1.6 million jobs predicted to be generated as a result of what we're doing. In the meantime, we've had companies like, for example, Peabody investing in mining here in Australia and not saying in any shape or form that as a result of what we're doing will have any impact on their investment decisions, or other companies like One Steel or BlueScope saying that the carbon price has no impact in terms of from their perspective. Well, they've said it. Go and take it up with them.
Tell that to the steel.
But they say that from their perspective this doesn't meet or doesn't form any part of the scare campaign and doesn't stack up to the scare campaign that's been put by the other side. The reality is what the other side want to do is hand over a stack of cash to polluters and hope that they will do the right thing, plant enough trees that would cover Tasmania 5 times over, and just keep their fingers crossed that they'd make an impact when they wouldn't. And despite all the huff and puff, Tony Abbott didn't have. He said he'd be here, he'd fight this all the way, and the first chance he got to go overseas, he did it.
Josh, just quickly, I want to ask you, before we move on, I do want to move on to another issue, but I want to ask you about the steel transformation plan. It's before the Senate today, $300 million steel transformation plan. Given Tony Abbott and yourself in your previous answer, talking about the impact on steel and so on, why can't the coalition differentiate between that bill and the rest of the clean energy bills that went through yesterday? Doesn't this reflect the criticism that's levelled at the opposition that it is opposing for the sake of it on occasions and today with that vote in the Senate?
Not at all. Look, despite what Ed has been saying, jobs are being lost in the steel sector because of these increased costs.
So why not stand and vote for the $300 million?
Kieran, because this is part of the carbon tax package, and we're against the carbon tax, and we're going to repeal it when we're in government. So we're not going to sort of pick and choose elements to support because we're against it, holus bolus, and that's why we'll repeal it and rescind it. But you can look right across the economy. We've lost more than 100,000 jobs in manufacturing. In key sectors like steel, they're under pressure. This government is very late to the game. It's now introducing this punishing carbon tax. It has no solution to keep jobs in Australia.
Ed, I want to ask you just quickly on this issue. We've got to move on, but the point that Josh makes there is accurate. That industry and others under pressure at the moment. Global uncertainty. We've seen that overnight with the chaos in Italy. Tell me, why shouldn't the government compromise, at least reduce the starting price, which is going to be double that of what Europe is at the moment, at least double that?
No, we've gone through an extensive process of consultation with industry on this, and we're trying to provide and bed down certainty in relation to the operation of the scheme. You can't just chop and change at the last minute because of political dictate. The issue about choosing which elements they support or not, the opposition were trawling their knuckles through any workplace they could to basically suggest that, particularly in terms of the steel sector, that things would come to an end. When it came to supporting this package designed to help the sector, they refused to vote. And a few moments ago, Josh said, well, we oppose the carbon tax and we oppose everything completely. If that's the case, why did last week, when they've said they've opposed the mining resource rent tax, have they chosen to support, and I agree with them on supporting, the superannuation changes? Why have they picked one thing to support in that package and not, but then left steel workers hanging by not supporting the steel transformation plan?
On that issue, that sort of leads us quite well into that. If you want to respond to that, Josh, you can. But also, in relation to that, there were criticisms about the consultation undertaken by the leadership on that decision. Also, concerns emerging over the anti-dumping proposal that the coalition's put forward about the lack of consultation there, that Tony Abbott isn't consulting enough and that he might be too close to the Nationals at the moment. What's your sense of that? We saw Andrew Robb excluded from a major decision on that superannuation policy that Ed referred to. Does Tony Abbott need to be more broad in terms of his consultation?
Well, look, Tony Abbott is very consultative. My experience and the party room's experience is he could not be better at doing that. In terms of the anti-dumping legislation, let's just get the record straight here. We took to the last election a policy to reform the anti-dumping legislation. We then developed a coalition task force chaired by Sophie Mirabella with representatives of both the front and the back bench. They came forward with a comprehensive set of proposals which were endorsed by the leadership group and the shadow cabinet. And this includes extra resources for anti-dumping specialists, moving the anti-dumping responsibilities away from customs towards industry and the industry department, and then also introducing this new change to the onus of proof, purely very consistent with the WTO obligations that Australia has and extremely important in protecting jobs in Australia. And I just ask Ed, if you don't support our anti-dumping reforms, what are you going to do to protect Australian jobs which are under threat from dumping measures from offshore companies and
All right,
individuals.
yeah, okay. Ed can respond to that, but I also want to ask you, Ed, about I spoke about the leadership issues relating to Tony Abbott, whether his approach is proving popular within his party at the moment in terms of consultation. You personally were fingered in one of the newspapers as a supporter of being behind Kevin Rudd, the push for Mr. Rudd.
Here we hear it.
Can you respond to those suggestions?
Well, I don't think it's going to come as any surprise to your viewers. I'm pretty direct and straightforward in my approach, and I also take a pretty strong position on particularly issues in my electorate. And as a result of that, you have some people who think that they can try and sling this type of garbage on you when I think it's flattering that they suggest the backbencher with 5 minutes experience is doing all this. When the
But you might be on the
is-
front bench, Ed.
when the
This might be
reality
a
is-
chance to be on the front bench.
when the reality is that I don't take a backward step in terms of sticking up for people I represent. And if they reckon that the type of stuff they've done in the last few days will stop me, well, good luck with that. But overall, my view is that a lot of this stuff's been a beat up publicly, and I don't see that what people have been talking about. I just don't get that sense in the caucus whatsoever. But certainly on the other side of the fence, you are seeing an emergence of a split between those who want to get things done and think policy through and those who just want to play politics. And that is going to become, and I've said that on this program before, it is going to keep widening because people see, particularly in terms of when it came to the Qantas dispute, the opposition were unable to coherently argue a position because they don't have policies. And they only play the politics and they keep boxing themselves
We've just been
in.
talking about our anti-dumping policy.
Okay.
What are you talking about, Ed?
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to wrap it up there, gents. It was a good chat. I've got to have a discussion with Bill Shorten, the Assistant Treasurer, joining us after the break. But for now, Josh Frydenberg, Ed Husic, we'll see you next time. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.